Welcome back. Okay, so today we're jumping right into this really fascinating commentary piece.
A video essay, right? On the cultural pivot of JoJo Siwa.
Exactly. It's looking at her shift from that sort of rebel phase to her new relationship, and then it tries to connect all that to some pretty heavy data about Gen Z.
Yeah, it's a really ambitious swing, trying to marry celebrity gossip with, actual academic sociology. That is a high wire act.
It really is, and you can feel the passion behind it, for sure. The author clearly believes JoJo is like a bellwether for her generation. But I gotta be honest, reading through the first part, I got a little bit of whiplash. We start with this deep dive into her bad girl era.
The weird gay sex icon phase, as they put it.
Right, and then boom, suddenly we're staring at charts from some Professor Eric Hoffman about university demographics.
And that, for me, is the first friction point. The author is asking JoJo Siwa to carry the weight of this massive sociological argument.
It's like the great man theory of history, but for a former Dance Mom star.
Exactly. The core issue is that logical bridge. You have this one super specific, eccentric anecdote, JoJo, and you're using her to prove a general rule about millions of teenagers.
But doesn't that make sense, though? I mean, she's the most visible example. If you want people to care about the data, you have to attach it to a face they know.
Oh, I agree. You need the hook. The hook is fine. The problem is the leap.
How so?
The author presents her transformation, her healing, as they call it, as proof that the trend is turning. But a skeptical listener, they're just going to say, wait a minute, JoJo Siwa lives in a Hollywood bubble.
She's a millionaire performer.
Right. Her changing her look isn't the same as a cultural shift on some Midwestern college campus. By treating her as the main piece of evidence, you actually risk weakening your whole point because she's such an outlier.
So the listener might dismiss the data because they dismiss the messenger.
Exactly. If I think JoJo is just doing this for attention, which, let's be real, is a possibility, then I'm going to assume this Gen Z shift is also just, smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so how do we fix that bridge? Because you don't want to cut the JoJo section. That's the most entertaining part.
No. You definitely keep it, but you have to reframe her role in the argument. You have to explicitly acknowledge the limitation.
So instead of her being the proof.
She's a high visibility symptom.
A symptom. Okay.
Right. So before you drop those Hoffman stats, you need a little transition. You say something like, now obviously JoJo's life in the spotlight makes her an extreme case. She's a performer.
But what's fascinating is that her pivot creates this loud parallel to a much quieter trend happening on college campuses.
There you go. You're calling out the elephant in the room. You're telling the audience, I know she's a celebrity. I know she's dramatic, but look at how this mirrors the data.
You validate their skepticism before they can even really form it.
You do. And you can even take it a step further. When you bring in the data, contrast the two worlds. Frame JoJo's past behavior as, Hollywood performance, and then contrast that with the idea of social contagion in universities.
I see.
You create a real intellectual thread. You're not just gluing a tabloid story to a lecture anymore.
Yeah, that makes the whole thing feel much more robust. It stops being a reaction video and starts feeling like, cultural anthropology.
Which is the goal, right? But if we're going to aim for that, then we have to talk about the language. Because there is a serious tonal clash happening in this script.
I noticed that too, yeah. On one hand, the author's quoting Michelle Obama, talking about sacrificial love, biological imperatives, very high-minded stuff.
And then, in the very next breath, we get crotch goblins.
Weird eye makeup, insane crap, things being shoved down our throats.
Right.
But to be fair, isn't that just the vernacular of the internet? If you're a commentary channel, isn't that how your audience expects you to talk? It gives it some edge.
It adds that, sure, but it dulls the blade of the argument. You have to decide what you want the piece to be. If it's a rant for people who already agree with you, fine, the slang works.
But the author is reaching for more.
They're reaching for so much more. They're citing data, they're talking about civilization building. You can't simultaneously try to be a serious cultural critic and sound like a Reddit comment section.
It's the juxtaposition that hurts it.
It completely undermines the authority. When you use a term like crotch goblin, it drags the whole discourse down. It signals to any neutral listener that this is just an us versus them internet beef, not a serious analysis.
Okay, so the fix is to harmonize the vocabulary, match the words to the thesis.
Exactly. If your thesis is about biology and evolution, your descriptors should be, clinical, analytical.
Okay, let's workshop it. The script describes the 2024 JoJo as cosplaying as a member of KISS and screaming at him. It's vivid, but
It's dismissive. How would an anthropologist say it?
performative excess?
Performative excess or hypersexualized rebellion. See? That sounds clinical.
It sounds like something you'd actually see in that Hoffman study.
And it's actually more damning, isn't it? Calling someone crazy is easy, but identifying their behavior as a specific type of performative excess, now that's a critique.
What about the crotch goblins line, where the author is criticizing people who hate kids?
You'd say proponents of antinatalism.
Wow, that changes the entire vibe.
It shifts the dynamic from haters versus fans to a clash of philosophies. Look, if you want to argue for sanity and health, your own language needs to sound sane and healthy. You can't fight chaos with more chaotic language.
That's a really good rule of thumb. Okay, let's shift gears. Less about philosophy, more about the nuts and bolts, the pacing.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, the ads.
We have to talk about the ads.
Look, it's a reality of the medium, right? You got to pay the bills. And honestly, the first ad read was pretty smooth.
It was.
It goes from talking about finding Jesus right into a spot for the Hallow prayer app. It felt thematic.
That one worked perfectly. It respected the listener's headspace. But then we get to the second one.
The beef tallow.
The beef tallow skin moisturizer.
I have to admit, I laughed, but not because it was funny. I was just so confused. We're in the middle of this intense redemption arc for JoJo.
Her fireball-chugging days are over. She's a doting fawn.
And suddenly the host is telling me about an ice storm in Tennessee.
It completely derails the momentum. It is a classic record scratch moment. The host just pulls you out of the story, forces you to think about Nashville weather.
And by the time he gets back to the topic, the tension is just gone. It evaporated.
You need to hold that tension, especially when you're building a complex argument like this.
So how do you fix it? The sponsor is skincare. The host is in an ice storm. How do you make that fit?
You have to use what we call narrative breadcrumbs. You look at the themes you've already established. Think about the visual language the author has been using for JoJo's new era.
Okay.
Words like fresh, glowing, natural, stripping away the costume.
Exactly. That's your bridge. You don't talk about the weather, you talk about the transformation. You say something like, we've been talking about shedding those artificial layers and finding a natural glow, which brings me to...
A mellow beef tallow.
Right. Or JoJo has ditched the heavy stage makeup for a fresh, natural look. And if you want to support your own natural biology, it's so much tighter.
It keeps the listener locked into the theme. It respects the narrative arc. It tells the listener, even during the commercial, I'm still focused on the...
That makes sense. Okay, I want to move to the last piece of the puzzle, and this one feels like the most significant, the conclusion.
The male agency problem.
Right. So, for 15 minutes, the host has been building this really compelling case that JoJo, or Joelle, as she's now called, that she did the hard work.
Right, she's the protagonist of her own redemption.
It's an empowering narrative. But then, in the very last minute, the host addresses the male audience and says, basically, if you meet a cute little gay girl, you can in fact fix her, and tells men to wield their power.
It's a complete self-own. It just collapses the entire argument.
You think so? I mean, I know I can fix her is a meme. It's kind of a joke.
It's a meme. Sure, but context is everything. If you spend the whole time arguing that women have this natural internal drive toward family and stability, you cannot end by saying men you need to fix them.
Because fixing implies she's a broken object.
And the man is the mechanic. It strips JoJo of all the agency you just spent 15 minutes praising. It turns a story about female maturity into a story about male conquest.
That's a really critical distinction.
And logically, it doesn't even hold water with his own argument. If nature takes over, then the man doesn't need to fix anything. He just needs to be there. By framing it as wielding power, he's actually suggesting her change wasn't natural at all, but that it was imposed on her.
It's reductive. It feels lazy. It's relying on a trope instead of finding a conclusion that actually matches the analysis.
Totally.
So let's rewrite it. How do we keep that appeal to young men, but frame it in a way that respects the biological argument?
You shift the focus from control to environment.
Environment?
Yeah, think of it like this. You're not a mechanic, you're a gardener. You don't fix a flower to make it bloom. You provide the right soil, the right sun, the right stability.
I love that. So instead of wield your power,
it's about providing a grounded presence. The rewrite should sound more like, men, do not underestimate the stabilizing power of a grounded, traditional masculine presence.
That sounds strong. It still gives men a crucial role.
A vital role. But it changes the dynamic. You could say, when you offer stability and strength, you create the space for women to step out of the chaos and into their true potential.
Step out of the chaos. I like that. It calls back to the bad girl era.
And it validates the partner, Chris Hughes. He didn't fix her like a broken toy. He provided the safety that allowed her to heal herself. That's a message of mutual biological reality.
And it avoids that cringe factor of the meme. It feels like a mature conclusion to a mature critique.
It's all about consistency, right? If you want to argue that traditional relationships are the bedrock of civilization, you have to treat them with respect. Fixing someone is a power play.
Cultivating a life together is civilization building.
Exactly. And that's really what all of these points boil down to. Consistency.
It's about deciding if this piece wants to be a quick hit for clicks or a thoughtful analysis.
The potential is definitely there. The author did the reading. They found the data. Now they just need to polish the glass so we can all see the view.
So let's wrap this up with a clear game plan. It's really 4 key moves.
First, that logical bridge. Acknowledge JoJo as an outlier, a symptom, not the proof before you hit them with the university stats.
Second, the vocabulary. Harmonize. Swap the internet slang for more analytical language. Performative excess, not crazy.
Third, smooth out those ad reads. Use narrative breadcrumbs. Connect the ad to the theme of transformation or natural glow. Keep the spell intact.
And finally, the conclusion.
Reframe the agency. Drop the fix her meme. Focus on the stabilizing power of a masculine presence. Frame it as a garden that allows for growth, not a workshop for broken women.
These changes really are the difference between a video people watch and forget and one they share because it actually changed how they think.
Absolutely. The raw material here is great. It just needs that final layer of refinement.
We can't wait to see the next draft. If you're listening and have a piece you're working on, script, article, anything, send it in. We want to help you make it bulletproof. Thanks for listening to The Critique.
We'll see you next time.